Hi 277, this week's update's a bit different. April 28th is the day of mourning for injured workers, and I'm here at the Peel Injured Workers Memorial to just talk a bit about what our local has done to help improve health and safety at our workplace. We've talked a lot in the last little bit about mental health in the workplace and PTSD. Our local advocated directly to the Minister of Labour for presumptive legislation for PTSD, which is now law, and we're going to see those changes coming very soon at WSIB, and it's really going to help people who have been affected by the work that we do. In addition, we've gone to our council and to our management to continue to advocate for a comprehensive mental health strategy. We've already had the peer support sessions, we've already had the Canadian Standards Association sessions to talk about how we can make our place more mentally safe. So peer support is going to be a large part of that, and changing our policies to ensure worker wellness is going to be a big part of that as well. We've introducing power load power lift stretchers that we advocated to council for. We spend about $4 million a year in WSIB premiums, well, not premiums, but paying for injured workers to come to work injured. And this big capital cost up front is going to pay for itself in money, but it's also going to pay for itself because you and I get to retire because we're a lot less likely to be injured by the work that we do. And the third and final one is the introduction of driver training. And this was the result of a grievance that Mike Spears put in. I do want to take a minute to thank Mike, because he's really been an absolute leader in health and safety provincially, and it's really impacted our local. It's changed the way that we think about problems, and it has really led to a lot of gains that are going to ensure our well-being for a long time. So Mike, thank you very much. You make this workplace safer, and everyone in the local appreciates the work that you do.
As I promised last episode, I'm going to go totally labor nerd and tell you guys all about May Day. May 1 is May Day, or International Workers' Day. It was designated as Workers' Day after a 1886 resolution by the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions to demand an 8-hour workday. At the time, workers were working 60 hours a week, and they adopted the slogan and the mission of 8-hour day with no cut in pay, and they saw it through. It was a national effort across the United States, but it really centered on Chicago. The movement centered in Chicago, where approximately 80,000 members protested in the streets. They went on general strike. They withdrew their labor, demanding that the employers across the board improve working conditions. The strike continued. On May 3rd, there was an incident at the McCormick Harvesting Machine Company plant that had locked down the workers. And they were bringing in strike breakers, and they were protected by a phalanx of police officers. There were 400 police officers protecting these scabs as they came in the factory, and obviously the workers outside were rallying, and they were upset. At the end of the workday, there was an interaction between the scabs and the workers, and the police officers reacted to something. There was no violence on the line, but the police officers actually reacted to something, and they killed two of the striking workers. The following day, the labor market called a meeting at Haymarket Square to discuss what was going on in the state of the 8-hour movement. And they have this big rally, and the police start to come in, and they're coming in to shut down the rally, and they address the speaker, a gentleman by the name of Augustus Spies, who was getting the crowd energized and telling them about the 8-hour movement and telling them what had happened the day before with the death of the two striking workers. And as the police were moving in, somebody threw a bomb or bombs at the police. And 7 police officers were killed. There were workers that were injured, and it was widely regarded as a giant massacre. This, what you're looking at right now, is actually a picture of a monument that's been built at Haymarket to commemorate that action. These are really shots that were heard around the world. I mean, the Chicago general strike and the general strike that occurred on May 1 really set the labor movement in motion. And these workers and these police officers lost their lives, and it was tragic, but their death was over 100 years ago, and it still has impact today. State violence and the response of worker violence are still very real concerns across the world when it comes to workers standing up for their rights. This is especially true in the developing world. There was a clip circulating the internet last year where mine workers in Africa were literally being executed for forming a union. In Colombia, assassinations of folks like me, union officials, are almost commonplace. They've been condemned by the International Labor Organization. So the threat of violence when standing up to capital is still very real. And it certainly informs everything that the labor movement does. So that's why May 1st is such a big deal across the world. So that's the history lesson. If you're still with me, uniform issues. So last week, I guess a couple of days ago on the update, I had mentioned that management wasn't tracking the problems with uniforms. After we pointed that out to them, they have begun tracking them. So please make sure and report any issues you have with your uniforms as they arrive, and then they will record the issues and hopefully start to be convinced that something needs to change and something needs to be fixed.